I was set up by my sister and forced to marry Xavier. Meanwhile, she trampled over my reputation and married my fiancé in a grand ceremony. For 3 years after marriage, Xavier treated me like a thorn in his side, with relentless cold violence and humiliation. Only after my sister died in a car accident did he finally ease his harsh demeanor toward me, granting me an empty shell of a marriage where we merely respect each other like guests. But before I could catch my breath, my family went bankrupt overnight, and I was hit by a truck on my way home. In my dying moments, I recognized the familiar face in the driver's seat. It was none other than my dear husband. Why? Filled with despair, I heard his chilling laughter in response, "It's all your fault. I was meant to be with your sister." Agonizing pain washed over me, and I died with unseeing eyes. When I opened them again, I had returned to the day I was framed. I jerked my eyes open, my entire body still aching with the excruciating pain of being hit by a car. My nerves felt as though they were being pierced by countless tiny needles, each stab sending a shiver through me. Before I could even recover from the lingering sensation of death, a scorching heat suddenly surged through my abdomen. Gritting my teeth, I dug my nails hard into my thigh, using the searing pain to steady my swaying body. Stumbling to the door, I pushed it open just a crack and spotted Yvonne peering furtively around the corner of the hallway. The scheming and guilt in her eyes were exactly the same as in my past life. Hatred surged within me in an instant, nearly drowning my reason. Clenching my fists, I crept silently behind her, seized the moment, and snatched a decorative flower pot from the hallway, bringing it down on her head with all my strength. Crash! The flower pot shattered upon impact, and Yvonne let out a muffled groan as she collapsed to the ground. I dragged her toward the room originally prepared for me. After tossing her inside, I yanked the blanket over and pressed it firmly over her face. Gritting my teeth, I spat out each word deliberately, "Yvonne, enjoy this little return gift." In my past life, during our engagement party, she drugged me and delivered me into Xavier's room. Then, the next day, she and my fiancé arrived with my parents and a crowd of guests to catch me in the act. To save face, Xavier had no choice but to marry me, while she got exactly what she wanted, my fiancé. In the 3rd year of marriage, Yvonne died in a car accident. Not long after, my family went bankrupt, and my parents passed away one after another. And me? I was personally run over by Xavier's car. Given this second chance at life, I'll return every ounce of suffering inflicted upon me in kind. The burning sensation in my body intensified as I stumbled forward, groping my way through. Found it. I pushed open the slightly ajar door with one shove. "Cecilia?" A gentle yet surprised voice called out. I looked up, squinting at the man before me. Beckett. The notorious playboy of City A. He seemed to have just stepped out of the shower, with only a loosely tied towel around his waist, droplets trailing down his jaw and slowly slipping into the hollow of his collarbone. The outlines of his 8-pack abs faintly showed through with each motion of him drying his hair, the curve of his waist taut with an alluring arch. Raising a brow to look at me, his damp lashes glistened, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly as the warmth of his body mingled with the steam, stirring an itch in the depths of one's heart. A guy who changed girlfriends every 3 to 5 days was the perfect antidote, no strings attached. I casually pulled out a black card and tossed it in front of him, then hooked my arm around his neck and kissed him. "Stay with me for the night." When I woke up again, it was already 5 a.m. The lingering scent of passion in the air left no doubt about what had happened here last night. Ignoring the soreness in my body, I took advantage of the fact that this young master was still asleep and slipped away like greased lightning. However, after I left, Beckett slowly opened his eyes in bed. I lazily returned to my room when it was barely 6 o'clock. My parents had booked the entire luxury hotel for 3 days for my engagement banquet. Little did they expect this would give opportunities to those with ulterior motives. I quickly took a shower to prepare for the upcoming drama. Looking at the bruises left on my originally fair skin, I couldn't help but recall yesterday's intensity. Is Beckett some kind of dog? He acted like he hadn't had meat in over a decade. Thankfully he still had some restraint, at least he didn't leave any marks on my neck. After dressing neatly, I leisurely pushed open the door and unhurriedly headed towards the first scene. Upstairs, the sounds of quarreling and chaotic footsteps had already begun. Yet, I remained unhurried, even stopping to greet familiar elders who had been awakened, offering polite greetings. In my past life, at this very moment, I had just woken up and was met with their scornful gazes, not the benevolent looks they gave me now. The 5th and 6th floors were reserved for guest rooms, while mine was conveniently located on the 4th floor. Right on cue, as I appeared at the staircase landing, I saw my fiancé pointing at the disheveled Xavier and shouting, "Cecilia is my fiancé. How dare you pull such a stunt at our engagement party? Have you no shame?" I paused mid-action, a sardonic smile curving at the corners of my mouth. In my past life, my fiancé Jasper had long been carrying on with my elder sister. Pitifully, in my previous existence, I'd failed to recognize their true characters and fell victim to their schemes. In the end, I became the villain in others' narratives while they used the situation to garner sympathy and reap all the benefits. The crowd gathered outside the room whispered among themselves. What disgraceful behavior! One wonders what kind of upbringing could produce such children. Thank goodness it wasn't us who entered the marriage alliance with Cecilia back then. A smug expression flashed across Jasper's face. The female lead of the engagement banquet caught in bed with her lover. Just imagine how explosive tomorrow's headlines would be. Through the wide-open door, I saw complete chaos inside the room. Xavier sat at the edge of the bed with an ugly expression, his upper body bare except for a pair of shorts, his honey-toned skin still flushed with telltale marks. And on the bed, a woman whose face was obscured was clutching the blanket tightly over her head, sobbing quietly. "Humph. Jasper, what are you all arguing about?" I interjected at the right moment, wearing an expression of innocence and sleep-dazed confusion. The crowd turned to look, their faces a mix of bewilderment, confusion, or stunned realization. If the person in bed isn't Cecilia, then who is it? I glanced at Jasper, watching his expression shift from shocked confusion to panic. "Cecilia? How are you here?" I innocently blinked my eyes and pointed at the woman on the bed. I was about to ask the same thing. How is my fiancé so certain the woman on that bed is me? That single sentence instantly made some who were still in the dark catch on. The crowd's gaze toward Jasper became profoundly meaningful. Enough, my father, who had remained silent until now, spoke with a darkened expression, attempting to put an end to this farce. However, at that moment, a figure suddenly darted through the crowd like lightning and, with swift and precise movements, yanked the blanket off the bed. Ah! Oh my, if it isn't our aloof beauty Yvonne. Serena leisurely watched the panicked Yvonne scrambling to pull up the sheets again and loudly announced. At these words, everyone finally got a clear look at the face of the person on the bed. What? Xavier's face momentarily stiffened. He turned his head and was shocked to discover it was truly his unattainable white moonlight. Hastily, he grabbed the blanket and wrapped her up tightly. "That's impossible." Jasper turned to glare at me, the fury in his eyes almost palpable. He suspected me. I sneered, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. My eyes brimmed with open defiance, so what if I did it? Watching Jasper's livid expression filled me with sheer delight. On the bed, Yvonne finally snapped out of her daze. She pounded viciously on Xavier, who was shielding her, and sobbed to our father for help. "Dad. It must be that bitch Cecilia." "Enough." Father's roar instantly silenced the entire hallway. He massaged his throbbing temples, struggling to regain his composure. "Please excuse this embarrassing spectacle. Cecilia, escort our elders home. We've been poor hosts today, and I'll make it up to everyone another time." "Not at all," the guests responded, though with varying thoughts behind their polite smiles. But since the host had spoken, none could reasonably linger. Serena gave me a playful wink before leaving, her face alight with amusement. After I'd seen off the last of the guests, only the key players of tonight's drama remained in the room. "Dad." Yvonne sobbed, still trying to speak as she pointed accusingly at me. It must be Cecilia's doing. You have to stand up for me. Father remained silent, while I calmly watched her performance. Soon there was a knock at the door from the secretary. Chairman, the hotel surveillance system was down yesterday for maintenance. Hearing this, Yvonne's face turned pale with fright. Seeing her father's expression, she suddenly realized things had taken a terrible turn. Dad, let me explain, that's not how it is. Slap, before she could finish speaking, her father struck her hard across the face. Ungrateful wretch. He glared at her furiously, his face livid. Do you really think I don't know about your little schemes? What do you think this will do to our family's reputation? To my standing? So he already knew everything. I lowered my gaze, concealing the mockery in my eyes. Jasper frowned, seemingly about to step forward to intervene, but forcibly halted his steps upon hearing Xavier's voice. I will marry Yvonne. Xavier's voice was resolute. I'll treat Yvonne well, so you can rest assured and leave her to me. I promise not a single word of this incident will spread. In our previous life, after we were caught in bed together, he pushed me away in disgust, leaving me disheveled before the crowd and turning me into a laughingstock. Who would have thought that in this lifetime, he could make such a promise to Yvonne? But then again, my dear sister might not necessarily appreciate it. Sure enough, Yvonne's hysterical screams pierced everyone's ears the next moment. Who said I'd marry you? She slapped Xavier hard, her face twisted in anger. You're just a worthless freeloader. If you weren't slightly useful, no one would bother with you. Yvonne. Xavier clearly hadn't expected his beloved to have always thought of him this way, his eyes filled with disbelief. I stood by watching this dog-eat-dog drama with cold indifference, never expecting Yvonne to charge at me like a madwoman. It's all your fault. You should be the one lying on this bed. I sidestepped her attack and coldly grasped Yvonne's wrist. Sis, you can eat recklessly, but you can't speak carelessly. This is, after all, illegal. Yvonne's expression shifted repeatedly before she finally settled for glaring at me hatefully, then let her hand drop weakly. It was you, wasn't it? The moment we turned the corner, Jasper grabbed my wrist with gritted teeth. How could it be Yvonne in his bed? Clearly you were the one who drank. As if realizing his slip of the tongue, he abruptly stopped speaking. I gently withdrew my hand, curling my lips into the same smile as always, with just the right amount of confusion. Jasper, what are you talking about? I never expected sister would do something like this either. But how can you be so certain it was me? You're acting really strange today. Unless, was it actually you who did this? Jasper stiffened abruptly and forced a laugh, saying, how could that be? Cecilia, you've misunderstood. I just thought your sister wouldn't do something like this. Then you think I would do something like this? I pouted, the smile vanishing from my face as if I were about to burst into tears the next second. No, no. Seeing me on the verge of tears, Jasper hurriedly comforted me. I was just overreacting out of concern. Be good, listen to me, I'll take you back first. The moment he left, my expression instantly turned cold. Oh? Cecilia sure changes expressions quickly. Who's there? I narrowed my eyes, sizing up the newcomer. Standing at 6'2", his tall frame looked even more imposing in that tailored suit. Those slightly upturned peach blossom eyes, with their flirtatious upward sweep at the outer corners, carried an innate charm when they moved. Well now, if it wasn't Beckett, the poor sod I'd just slept with last night. Beckett, I put on an innocent smile as I greeted him, I've no idea what you're talking about. Little fox. Beckett curled his lips into a roguish grin. Not planning to take responsibility after sleeping with me? I raised an eyebrow at him, neither confirming nor denying. I remember leaving a tip. Is Cecilia dissatisfied with my service last night? I don't think this is all I'm worth. I blinked. The card I gave him yesterday definitely held at least $1 million, was that still not enough? Perhaps my frowning, pensive expression amused him, because he casually handed me a card. This is my supplementary card, no spending limit. After a brief pause, probably worried I might refuse, he added, "Gifts are meant to be reciprocated." I nodded without declining and accepted this ambiguous card. Why turn down free money? After all, though Beckett might be a playboy, his net worth was easily 10 times mine. Yvonne and Xavier got married. There was no grand wedding, just a rushed marriage license and a casual dinner with a few familiar guests to mark the occasion. Father's logic was crystal clear: I was engaged first, so naturally I should marry first. To avoid complications, it was best for my sister and Xavier's wedding to be as simple as possible. To be honest, I was quite grateful to the old man in this matter. At least he didn't force Jasper and me to rush into marriage for the sake of so-called family honor. Otherwise, the next act of this drama would have been much harder to perform. Early next morning, I rose refreshed and invigorated, only to hear news about Yvonne from our household servants. They say Yvonne kicked Xavier out in the middle of the night yesterday. Everyone's talking about the embarrassing scene she caused at Cecilia's engagement banquet. How dare she show her face again? That Xavier is no good either. In my past life, these whispers and scornful looks were all directed at me. Now it's finally my sister and Xavier's turn to taste it. Good morning, I greeted the two with a smile. The two were startled, and after realizing what had happened, they quickly responded, "Good morning. Will you be going out today?" I nodded and instructed the driver to prepare the car for me. Cecilia is still the best, beautiful and gentle in speech. Most importantly, she knows how to read the room. Listening to the praises behind me, I curled my lips slightly without a trace of emotion. In my past life, because of Xavier's disgust toward me, we never shared a bed. Xavier's mother had always favored Yvonne as her ideal daughter-in-law, so she never liked me to begin with. After that incident, she made it a regular habit to enforce her house rules on me. 3 years into our marriage, because I hadn't given birth to a chubby grandson for her, she forced me to kneel for an entire night. Left with no choice, I tried imitating my sister's style, donning a little white dress with light makeup before pushing open Xavier's bedroom door. Little did I expect Xavier's expression to darken immediately at the sight of my outfit. He scoffed coldly, "You're copying your sister." I clung desperately to his neck, "Xavier, we..." But he shoved me away violently, and I crashed into the corner of the table with a loud thud. A faint crack sound came from my bones. Xavier looked at me with disgust. "Cecilia, I won't be fooled by you again." And so, he threw me out the door, making me the laughingstock of the entire social circle. Almost every time I stepped outside, I could hear people's undisguised scornful laughter. "See that? That Cecilia is the female lead who climbed into someone's bed but still got rejected. I heard she tried her old tricks to seduce her own husband once and got thrown out. In my opinion, her status isn't even as good as a family dog." Then came waves of mocking laughter, threatening to drown me completely in endless darkness. "Cecilia?" Beckett's soft call snapped me back to reality. He gave me a worried glance. "If you're not feeling well, maybe I should take you to the hospital." I froze momentarily before slowly shaking my head, maintaining the perfect gentle expression. "I'm fine, no need to worry." When he texted last night asking to take me to dinner, my first instinct had been to refuse. But after glancing at the card beside me, I hesitated before ultimately agreeing. "Cecilia," Beckett suddenly called out. "Hmm?" I looked at him puzzled, not understanding why he suddenly called my name. "If you're tired, you don't have to pretend." I froze, staring blankly into his earnest eyes that reflected a small version of myself, wearing a perfectly practiced smile. "I'm not." I instinctively wanted to argue back, but seeing his serious expression, I somehow found myself unable to speak. Beckett looked at me quietly, returning to his usual charming demeanor as he smiled and said, "After dinner, I'll take you somewhere nice." "You're not planning to sell me off, are you?" I shot him a suspicious glance. He couldn't help but laugh. "What are you talking about? Human trafficking is illegal, you know. Besides, I'd never sell such a beautiful woman like you. I'd be too reluctant to part with you. You're impossible." I rolled my eyes at him in exasperation. It wasn't until we arrived that I realized what Beckett meant. This was where he and his rich boy friends usually came to race cars and let loose. As the car rounded the final bend, the roar of engines came rushing in through the windows with the wind. Leaning out, I saw 7 or 8 modified racing cars parked in a clearing halfway up the mountain. A group of young men and women in racing suits were leaning against the vehicles, laughing and chatting. Seeing Beckett's car, someone whistled, "Yo, Beckett actually brought a pretty girl today?" Beckett ignored them, parking the car directly at the very end. As he pulled me out of the car, he handed me a black racing jacket with a number printed on it. "Put this on, so you don't catch a cold from the wind later." The mountain breeze was indeed cool, carrying the fresh scent of grass and trees as it brushed against my face. I slipped on the racing jacket, and it surprisingly fit perfectly. Just as I was bending down to tie my shoelaces, I heard Beckett greeting someone. "Same old rules, 3 laps? Come on, who's scared of you?" A blond guy slapped his car door, his eyes curiously glancing in my direction. Beckett opened the car door for me with a pleased gesture, his eyes brimming with eager excitement. "Hold on tight." The seatbelt tightened around me. Just as I grabbed the passenger handle, the car shot forward like an arrow from a bow. The track, carved along the mountain slope, was barely wide enough for 2 cars side by side, one side a steep cliff face, the other a sheer drop overlooking farmland far below. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. Ah! As we took the first sharp turn, the car nearly skidded sideways, making me scream involuntarily. But my voice caught in my throat when I caught a glimpse of Beckett's focused profile. His usual carefree grin was gone. His brows were slightly furrowed, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. His eyes burned with an intense fire, his whole body radiating a reckless, untamed energy. Wind rushed through the open windows, whipping my hair wildly. The roar of the engine and the screech of tires against asphalt filled my ears. On the second lap, when the car behind us closed in, Beckett suddenly jerked the wheel, overtaking along the cliffside. Terrified, I screamed again, only to hear his low chuckle. "Don't be afraid. I've got you." The voice mingled with the wind, yet strangely brought a sense of calm. As I crossed the finish line on the final lap, I practically collapsed into the seat, gasping for breath, my cheeks burning fiercely. Beckett turned off the engine and looked at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Cecilia, you were screeching louder than the finches on the mountaintop just now." I glared at him but lacked the strength, only managing to let out a huff as I clutched my wildly pounding chest. He suddenly leaned over, unfastened my seatbelt for me, his fingertips brushing against my chin with an indescribable hint of intimacy. "Still think you need to pretend now?" The mountain wind carried distant insect chirps as it swept by. I gazed into his eyes, so close they mirrored both the mountain shadows and my own reflection, the wild, unrestrained version of myself I hadn't had time to conceal. The exhilaration from my earlier scream still lingered in my throat when I suddenly laughed, a genuine, unfiltered laugh that bubbled up from within. "Beckett, you're truly insane." He arched a brow, his grin turning roguish. "Better to go wild once than bottle it all up, don't you think? At the very least, I hope that from now on, you'll just be you when you're with me." I didn't answer. Instead, I kissed him, giving him the wildest reply of all. Since returning from that racing incident, my relationship with Beckett has grown much closer. "Just look, he's messaged me again." Beckett said, "I saw your fiancé." Following closely was a crystal-clear photo of a kiss. "Oh, seems like unpleasant news." I calmly opened the photo. Under dim lighting, the two were passionately making out, a handsome man and a beautiful woman, as if heaven's thunder were about to strike Earth's fire the next second, leaving viewers parched with thirst. Well, if it isn't my dear sister. Looks like the two of them have rekindled their old flame. I never thought I'd need to go looking for trouble when she's serving up evidence on a silver platter like this. Just then, another message popped up. "I've got even juicier stuff, though I'm afraid it might scorch your retinas. Send it over." I raised an eyebrow as I flipped through the increasingly scandalous photos before me. Word has it my lovely sister hasn't been getting along too well with Xavier in the bedroom department, last week she even slapped Xavier's mother across the face. The Xavier household must be in absolute chaos right now. Very well, it's time to break off the engagement. I stared at the increasingly scandalous pictures before me, my fingertips gliding across the cold phone screen before finally pausing over the send button. Without a hint of hesitation, I packaged those most explosive photos along with the time and location notes provided by Beckett, then precisely sent them to both Jasper and my father. The air in the study seemed to freeze solid. My father stood with his back to me before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, beyond which stretched the dazzling yet icy nighttime cityscape. The tablet screen before him still glowed brightly with that thunder and lightning kiss photo, glaringly vivid. "Did you send this?" His voice was low, betraying no emotion, but the tension in his rigid posture hinted at the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Yes," I admitted frankly, my voice calm and steady. He whirled around abruptly, his sharp gaze cutting like a blade. "What are you trying to do?" "Break off the engagement." 2 words, firm and resounding. "Nonsense." Father slammed his palm on the heavy desk with a dull, thunderous crash. "Can't you see how many interests are tied up in this alliance between our families? Without Jasper's support, the capital chain, the West City project, those scheming old foxes on the board. Which one of these wouldn't become a problem? Our family can't afford such turmoil right now." His fury was expected. Meeting his gaze without flinching, I curled my lips into a cold smile. "Problems? Then let those problems be Jasper families to deal with. Father, rest assured, I will handle all the issues, and I will make Jasper pay a price far greater than the marriage alliance itself for their mistake." Father stared at me intently, as if weighing the gravity of my words. The study was filled only with the sound of his heavy breathing. 3 days later, on the top floor of Jasper Group, in the CEO's office. The air was as cold as an ice cellar. Jasper sat behind his massive desk, his face livid. Spread out before him was the utterly ruthless compensation agreement I had proposed. The terms involved the transfer of profits from multiple key projects, the division of market shares, and a nearly astronomical sum for reputational damages. "Cecilia, leave some room for maneuver," he practically ground out through clenched teeth. "There's no way I can accept all these conditions." I lounged comfortably on the sofa opposite him, fingertips lightly tapping the armrest as if admiring an intriguing exhibit. "Jasper," I smiled, though the warmth never reached my eyes, "it seems you haven't quite grasped the situation? I'm not here to bargain with you. Sign it. I'll issue the announcement. We'll terminate the engagement amicably and everyone walks away unharmed. Or..." I deliberately paused, taking out my phone. The screen unlocked, my finger hovering over the send button. The thumbnails barely visible on the display hinted at far more unsavory contents. "Let me make the choice for you. Shall I let the city's media outlets celebrate your heartwarming old flame with my dear sister? I'm sure Xavier, along with your company's shareholders, would find this absolutely fascinating." Jasper's pupils contracted violently, veins bulging across his forehead. He couldn't bear seeing his pure white moonlight tarnished like this, nor could he tolerate damage to his reputation. Even if that reputation now hung by the thinnest of threads. He stared fixedly at my phone, then at the agreement, as if weighing the layers of hell. The office was terrifyingly silent, even the sound of air moving had vanished. After a long, suffocating pause, he suddenly grabbed the pen on the table with such force it nearly shattered in his grip. He practically lunged at the agreement, signing his name in frantic, savage strokes brimming with endless humiliation. "You'd better keep your word." He threw down the pen, his voice hoarse. "Of course." I neatly tucked away the copy of the agreement, maintaining an elegant and appropriate smile. "Pleasure doing business, Jasper. See you in the announcement." 2 days later, Quinn Holdings and Fox Enterprises jointly issued a statement announcing the peaceful dissolution of my engagement with Jasper, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason. The wording of the statement was official and dignified, masking all turmoil beneath its calm phrasing. Even though the reason was utterly ridiculous. Meanwhile, within Fox Enterprises, a significant transfer of interests was quietly underway, and massive funds silently flowed into several core project accounts of Quinn Holdings. The afternoon the announcement was released, the sunlight was just right. I sat in my spacious, bright office, watching online discussions about the amicable breakup begin to brew. With a light swipe of my finger across the tablet, I selected the care package sent by Beckett, one I hadn't shared with anyone yet. Inside were not just intimate photos from more angles, but also meticulously documented rendezvous records with clear timelines. Even including a slightly blurred but unmistakable video clip of my dear sister having a fierce argument with Xavier and slapping his mother. Without a moment's hesitation, I anonymously sent this gift package to the inboxes of all the most influential gossip media editors in the city. After completing this, I picked up the coffee beside me and took a small sip. The bitter richness spread across my tongue. After all, I am no gentleman. Setting down the coffee cup, I gazed out the window at the bustling scene of endless traffic, my eyes utterly calm. The real show had only just begun. The news of Jaspers Corporation being in dire straits, with its stock prices plummeting, became the headline of both the financial and gossip sections. Jaspers' frantic efforts to put out fires everywhere had become an open joke in the industry. Meanwhile, at the eye of the storm, I sat comfortably in Beckett's top-floor office with its breathtaking view. Hey! I win! A pure straight flush. Pay up, pay up. With a flourish, I pushed my tiles forward, grinning from ear to ear as I held out my hand to Beckett and his two trusted lieutenants at the mahjong table. Cecilia's luck is just too damn good. Jay, sitting across from me, wailed as he pulled out his wallet. Beckett, you're making it way too obvious, feeding Cecilia exactly the cards she wants. Another buddy, Ryder, chimed in with a laugh, yeah, seriously. Beckett's playing like he might as well just hand the money straight to Cecilia. Cecilia, your poker skills and this aura of yours are something else, no wonder Beckett's been head over heels for you all these years. I was happily raking in the cash, my fingers brushing against the cool bills, when Ryder's words, head over heels for you all these years, hit me like a stone tossed into still water, sending ripples of shock through my mind. What? The smile froze on my face. Instinctively, I looked up at Ryder, then whipped my head around to stare at Beckett, my expression a mix of utter confusion and a flicker of panic I hadn't even realized was there. Liked, for many years? The air seemed to freeze instantly. Even the crisp sound of cards clinking disappeared. Ryder and Jay exchanged glances, their faces showing the regret of oops, slipped up, but their eyes simultaneously darted toward Beckett with a mix of testing and bro, you handle this vibes. Beckett's peach blossom eyes, originally filled with indulgent amusement, now flickered with a barely noticeable trace of tension. He first pretended to glare angrily at Ryder and scolded in a low voice, you talk too much. Getting carried away after winning a little money? Get out of here now. Ryder and Jay acted as if pardoned from death row, immediately standing up, with Jay still managing to grin and add a playful remark. Don't misunderstand, Cecilia. Beckett hasn't touched another woman all these years, he's been waiting for you. We're leaving right now, right now. With that, the two of them slipped away as fast as their feet could carry them, leaving only Beckett and me in the vast office in an instant. The once lively and bustling space had now fallen so quiet that I could hear the faint hum outside the window, and the somewhat erratic beating of my own heart. Beckett sat across from me, his usual careless, flirtatious smile nowhere to be seen. His eyes were slightly lowered, and his slender fingers unconsciously toyed with a mahjong tile. The warm yellow light cast on his sharply defined profile, unexpectedly revealing a rare hint of awkwardness and earnestness. You. I cleared my dry throat, my voice much softer than usual. You've liked me all this time? Beckett raised his head, those peach blossom eyes always brimming with charm now clearly reflecting my figure. Gone was their usual frivolity, replaced only by a deep, focused light, like a tranquil sea. He somewhat sheepishly touched his tall, straight-nosed bridge, his ears seemingly tinged with a barely perceptible blush. Then, softly yet firmly, he responded with a single word, "Mm." That one syllable carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, landing heavily upon my heart. Not teasing, not joking. It was serious. Those past fragments, how he always appeared right when I needed him most, those seemingly casual acts of protection. Those actions I had interpreted as brotherly loyalty or his idle pastimes, now carried a brand new, scorching hot interpretation. For a moment, I didn't know what to say, simply staring at him. He gazed back with an intensity that seemed to pierce through time, returning to that initial moment when his heart first stirred. A peculiar tension filled the air, ambiguous, probing, with just a hint of dust-settling relief. He stood up but didn't approach immediately, instead circling the table to sit in the spot beside me. As the distance closed, the faint, crisp scent of cedar mixed with tobacco from him became distinct, no longer just that superficial perfume fragrance. "Did I scare you?" He tilted his head to look at me, his voice low and gentle, carrying a trace of barely noticeable caution. "A little, unexpected," I answered honestly, my fingertips curling unconsciously. "I thought you thought I was just some playboy who acts like this with everyone?" He gave a self-deprecating tug at the corner of his mouth, yet his gaze remained firmly locked on me. "That's because, you once said you found those sunny, open-hearted, even somewhat flirtatious types more interesting. You said the reserved ones were boring." A crack opened in the floodgates of memory. This seemed to be some idle remark I'd made during a lazy afternoon chat with a close friend back in high school. "So, you changed yourself into this?" I stared at him in disbelief. No wonder everyone in the circle said Beckett seemed like a completely different person overnight. He responded again, this time with a hint of resignation and frankness. "I thought, if I could become someone you like, maybe I could get a little closer to you." He paused, his gaze growing even more profound, tinged with helplessness. "All these years, those so-called romantic escapades were just for show. I never touched them." He leaned in close, his warm breath almost brushing against my ear, carrying an unprecedented seriousness and nervousness. Those always smiling peach blossom eyes were now filled with undisguised anticipation and a fragile vulnerability, as if awaiting judgment. I watched as my slightly stunned reflection became clearly visible in his eyes. The hardened corner of my heart, frozen by vengeance, seemed to quietly thaw just a crack under the heat of his gaze, a gaze that had burned for so many years. Time seemed to stretch in that moment. The neon lights outside the window flickered, tracing the handsome outline of his face so close at hand. I didn't speak, only reached out my hand, my fingertips lightly brushing against his slightly reddened knuckles, the ones he had unconsciously rubbed while fidgeting with the card. That subtle motion made Beckett's breath catch abruptly, and in the next instant, those peach blossom eyes of his erupted with a brilliance so dazzling, it outshone every light outside the window. He turned his hand, cautiously, with a slight tremble, yet with unshakable determination, and grasped the tips of my fingers. I took over the family business. In my past life, after I married Xavier, I was expelled from the management, and the entire family enterprise fell into Yvonne's hands. Later, when Yvonne died in a car accident, Quinn Holdings was directly merged into Fox Enterprises. Now that it has fallen into my hands this time, I will naturally carry Quinn Holdings forward and live up to my mother's efforts. The monotonous routine of daily life was utterly tedious, and my busy schedule had nearly made me forget about that couple who hadn't been properly dealt with yet. That day, just as I stepped out of the office building, I was hit by a wave of profound despair. It was Xavier. He looked like a withered tree utterly ravaged by a violent storm. Despite being barely 30, his temples were already streaked with glaring white. He had become so emaciated that even his once expensive suit hung loosely and wrinkled on his frame, exuding an aura of decay, as if he were on the verge of collapse. "Cecilia!" That heart-wrenching yet deeply affectionate cry made my temples throb violently, churning my stomach with nausea as an ominous premonition slithered up my spine. Sure enough, the next second, that man who had once strutted so arrogantly before me suddenly seemed to have all his bones removed. With a heavy thud, he crashed to his knees on the cold, hard marble floor. I cursed under my breath, my body reacting faster than my brain as I swiftly leaped aside with a large stride, my movements crisp as if dodging some deadly virus. Nonsense, who would dare accept the salutations of a king among cuckolds? What's gotten into you? I looked down at him with furrowed brows, my expression openly dripping with undisguised revulsion. To my astonishment, he suddenly lunged forward and desperately wrapped his arms around my calf as I took a step away. Wah! He began wailing like a 3-year-old without an ounce of dignity, his face smeared with snot and tears. I'm sorry, Cecilia, sorry, wifey. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have treated you like that in our past life. I was heartless. I was blind. You can hit me. You can curse at me. You can even kill me. Just please forgive me, wah. My previous life? My pupils suddenly contracted. This guy, he actually got reborn too. You don't know. That's true, Yvonne. She's a complete lunatic. A devil. He wailed, his voice hoarse and broken, filled with bone-deep terror and hatred. She's not half as good as you. Not only did she openly cheat on me, she also destroyed my family. She's turned our home upside down. She's nothing but a jinx. Honey, please come back? Let's start over, I'll give you anything, even my life if you want. Start over? His shameless words made me laugh in anger. Xavier, did Yvonne knock your brains out? Or did you dumb yourself to death? Without hesitation, I raised my foot, ready to kick this filthy thing out with all my strength. Thud. A muffled sound, mixed with the crisp crack of bone hitting something hard, landed on him before I could deliver my kick. A gleaming handmade leather shoe struck Xavier with the force of a thunderbolt. The impact was so tremendous that it sent him tumbling sideways, rolling several times like a ragged sack before finally coming to a stop. Arg! Xavier shrieked like a slaughtered pig, clutching his kicked arm as he curled up on the ground, writhing in agony. The restraint around my ankle vanished instantly. A tall, imposing figure emerged amidst the chilling air, standing like a sudden glacial barrier between me and the pathetic heap on the floor. Beckett appeared at some unknown moment, his face as dark as storm clouds, those typically charming and smiling peach blossom eyes now glinting with terrifying shards of ice. His sharp gaze was like a tangible blade, ruthlessly scraping over Xavier's body. He leisurely adjusted his slightly disheveled suit sleeves from the earlier kick, his movements elegant yet carrying an aura of bone-chilling menace. Leaning slightly forward, he looked down imperiously at Xavier writhing and howling on the ground. His voice wasn't loud, but cold as a Siberian winter wind, each word carrying a frostbite-inducing severity. Who did you just call wife? He paused, the corner of his mouth curling into a dangerously cold, mirthless smile as he added, her name. Do you think trash like you is even worthy of uttering it? Don't dirty her hands with you. In the end, Xavier was dragged away by Yvonne. Rumor has it they had another fierce argument afterward, but that's none of my concern now. I was in the midst of preparing for my wedding with Beckett. Are you sure you want to hand everything over to me? Hesitant, I stared at the salary cards and property disclosure documents he'd submitted, momentarily stunned. Of course. Beckett gently kissed my forehead. Nothing is more important than you. On the wedding day, I heard Xavier had gone mad and crashed his car into the compartment where Jasper and Yvonne were fooling around, killing all three instantly. I laughed, this counted as the second best wedding gift for me. What? You're asking about the best wedding gift? I glanced down at the man lying beneath me, wrapped up like a gift, and flashed a wicked grin. Looks like he's right here.